first video, I'll just be going over some of the basics that we'd already talked about in class, but sometimes it's just nice to have a reference video that we can turn back to if we forget some of the basics of getting started. And then later videos for this week, since we did not meet because of the weather, we'll cover some of the suggestions I have regarding the future chapters that we'll be discussing. And then when we meet next week in class, I'll be going over some new material as well. So this is just a brief video to go over some of the basics. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and I've discovered, is that when you go into the virtual desktop here and you click on that, and then you're into the virtual desktop, and you see, after you've opened QuickBooks, you'll see the screen that looks like this when you've cleared out for example, the company desktop. Sometimes when you're in the virtual desktop, you may forget what company you're working in, especially if you have like more than one company open. So it is possible to open, for example, a second company if you wish to do so. I will tell you that that can slow things down a little bit in QuickBooks if you do that. In any event, when you're working in the virtual desktop, a couple of hints I wanted to mention. First of all, you don't see the name of the company that you're working for because the virtual desktop menu bar up here conceals it. So if you click on this little push pin, that'll unpin that desktop menu for the virtual desktop, and then you can see that you're in Chapter 1, Christina Riani Interior Designs. So there are other ways, of course, of determining what company you're in, but when you're in the virtual desktop, this is hidden unless you unpin this top bar. Another thing I wanted to mention as well, I'm just going to pin this for the time being. Another hint I want to mention is that if you do use your USB drive, you generally want to have automatically connect when inserted checked, and then you're going to want to check the PNY USB too if your jump drive or your flash drive is not working. So you can click on that, and then that will facilitate the opening of your jump drive. However, I found that whether I'm in the virtual desktop or if I'm using QuickBooks program directly, that if I want to open a file, and let's say I want to open or restore a new company, and I'll just click open a new company here, and it'll take a while because the virtual desktop is slower than working directly. And when this opens up, now you'll see that I have my choice of companies, but this isn't from my jump drive. I have this defaulted to my documents. So if I were to drill down here, I find it's much easier to access the files by loading them into documents, and then they're easily accessible from the virtual desktop as well, and then you can open up your files. Sometimes using the jump drive, the virtual disk drive doesn't do a great job in recognizing jump drives, and then there are problems opening them up. So let me just close out of here, and we'll go back into Christina Rihanna for Chapter 1. And by the way, while you're working, it does say the list of companies that you are working with. I also want to demonstrate that when you open a company, it does ask you, as we talked about in class, for the password. So you'll have to enter the student 1, capital STUDENT 1, to access the files, and then click OK. So you'll have to do that whether in the virtual desktop or not. But again, the virtual desktop will be slower. So as I recommended in class, it's usually better to work directly with your own version of QuickBooks that you have loaded in on your desktop. Another thing I want to mention that's unique about the virtual desktop is that if you save any setting, if you change any setting in the virtual desktop QuickBooks, because this is shared with other students, generally your any settings that you save will not remain saved. So if you really want, for example, if I wanted to edit my preferences here, and I wanted to change one of my settings here, for example, I could use today's date as a default, and I change that under the virtual desktop, that change would not remain. Also is true of the view list. If I went to the view list and I said, okay, I don't want to hide the icon bar, and the next time I open up, the icon bar will appear. Let's have the on the left here. Actually, I can get it right now. So if I click on left and then I get my menu bar on the left, if I so choose to use that, then that setting will not be saved generally in the QuickBooks program if you access it through the virtual desktop for the reasons I mentioned. However, if you change these settings for each company, for the companies in your own version of QuickBooks that's not accessed through the virtual desktop, then those changes should be saved. As I mentioned in class, this generally is the screen you want to be working out of, and I'm just going to unpin that for a minute. And so I see I'm in the Chapter 1 Christine Riani Interior Designs. So in future videos then for this week, I'll present some additional information regarding the future chapters so that we're all caught up by the time we meet next week. If you have any questions, please let me know.